Good morning, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to view this video. I'll be talking about the use of drones and specifically aerial thermal imaging and how that plays a role in public safety missions. Of all the uses of this technology, to me is by far the most important, and I'm thankful for the meaning it brings my job at FLIR. My name is Randall Warnes. I've been in the drone industry since 2014. I co-founded what was one of the largest drone resellers at the time in 2014, and during that time interacted with thousands of early adopters of drones. In late 2015, I joined DJI and was asked to pioneer the enterprise division in North America. And this all began with the announcement of the Msx XT in December of that year in partnership with FLIR. Over the course of a little more than a year at DJI, I worked with countless partners in the industry to justify that this technology was invaluable in doing things safer and more efficiently in the workplace. Since the start of this year, I moved over to FLIR and have been managing the UAS efforts globally. I've had the privilege of interacting with a large network of public safety entities around the world, and today I want to share with you some of the common threads which are pushing the technology forward. Please take down any questions or feedback that come to mind during this presentation and feel free to shoot me an email at any time. Your inputs could be what shapes the products that we produce in the future and the decisions that we make in putting this technology forward. So I've boiled this presentation down into 3 sections. First, I'll give you an idea of what the public safety market looks like and how it's a potential driver for growth in the drone industry. Second, I'll discuss a range of capabilities with thermal imaging cameras and how they're best used in public safety applications. And lastly, I'll detail a few specific use cases for aerial thermal imaging drones. So over the course of this presentation, I'm going to be discussing public safety as it pertains to firefighting, law enforcement, and search and rescue. What I've found is that even though these each serve a different function, they share many common links, not only with the way that they use drones and thermal imaging, but how they attain budgets and interact with the public. So whether you're a manufacturer, a software company, a value-added reseller, or an active or investigating end user of this technology, I hope that you'll find these contents useful. I would also like to preface that much of the statistics I'll be presenting today are based off of the United States, but I think that they're representative for this technology anywhere in the world. So as drones have become another tool in the tool belt for public safety, the sheer size of the market presents an opportunity that can help further the drone industry. To me, it's very important to frame this opportunity that the public safety market presents as one where the technology, you could put it in the hands of potential users that could drive the most value out of it, rather than just a revenue-generating opportunity. With the uncertain landscape of regulations of this technology in the future, the more we could do to put this technology into responsible hands doing meaningful work, the more likely we're going to secure its longevity. With that being said, there are over 1.2 million firefighters in the United States alone, and these are dispersed around 30,000 departments across the country. And the maps that you see on the left here, what they do is depict the departments categorized by the population size that their jurisdiction represents. The reason that I have these maps here is to show that firefighting is not a regional thing, but it's a global need. Due to the potential size and scope of the market that it presents, there's a real opportunity for drone development to focus on providing these users with the best tools possible so that we, the manufacturers, can do so in confidence that there will be a return on investment. In the United States, firefighters and fire departments respond to about 34 million incidents a year, and each of these are a unique opportunity to deploy and validate technology of some kind. And of the 30,000 fire departments in the United States, I estimate that less than 1,000 of them are using drones today. We in the drone industry should be supporting and rewarding the early adopters by listening to their needs and working tirelessly to improve drone technology on their behalf. And we can make that investment confidently, again, because of all the use cases for industrial applications of drones, I believe that public safety is the least likely to be impeded by regulations. So looking at the law enforcement side of things, the population of law enforcement agents in the United States is only slightly less than firefighters at 1.1 million. And that's dispersed over 18,000 federal, state, and municipal agencies. There's around 240 million 911 calls in the United States received each year, and there's more than 31 million unique individuals that request police assistance. Again, this gives a variety of opportunities to deploy this technology. As the map shows here, you're looking at the number of law enforcement agents by state, and this is just showing that this isn't just a regional or a certain state that's having an opportunity to deploy technology in law enforcement, but it's a worldwide opportunity to develop this technology to serve the public good. I estimate that less than 800 departments are using drones today in the United States, and again, regulations are going to be the most unlikely to strip public safety of their ability to deploy drones into the future. Now looking at search and rescue. Estimating the size of search and rescue opportunities can be quite difficult. However, I think we can all agree this is probably the most important use for the drone technology today. I conducted a survey recently, and it came out that conducting search and rescue missions was the priority of 100% of the respondents in public safety for their drone programs. And in many cases, search and rescue was the driver for creating those programs. Now, to provide an idea and scope of the missions that are being done in public safety, the United States Coast Guard takes on around 17,000 missing person cases each year. And also the U.S. National Park Service conducts around 11 search and rescue missions daily. Drone technology has a proven track record of saving lives, and we can improve upon these numbers with the right hardware, software, knowledge, information sharing, things like that. Search and rescue is also a worldwide need. If you look at the map here, all the green areas are where there's national parks in the US, and then the red areas that I highlighted are the 5 national parks or national recreation areas where over 50% of all the search and rescue missions for the National Park Service happen in the United States. And once again, regulations will be the least likely to impede the use of drones in public safety. So let's look at some of the capabilities. FLIR technology has been used in aerial thermal imaging platforms for decades. There are some well-known and some lesser-known capabilities of this technology that I want to share with you. So I want to detail a couple of these so you can know the features and understand why they're used and how they're used. So I'll go into FLIR's proprietary Msx Image Blending technology. Then I will talk about selecting the right color palette for your mission. I'll give you some information on isotherms. I'll talk about radiometry and whether it adds value in public safety. I'll talk about covering ground, which deals with resolution, field of view, and selecting the right camera for your camera specifications for your missions. And then I'll share some best practices in public safety using aerial thermal imaging. So first, looking at MSX, FLIR's MSX technology, or multispectral dynamic imaging, it's available on a number of FLIR products that consist of a thermal and visible camera in the same unit. In basic terms, what's happening is that the camera takes the edges produced by the visible image and then embosses it onto the thermal image, providing better texture, more detail than just the thermal image alone. This image processing is done real time, so you can detect or recognize and analyze the targets better. This also allows you to attain thermal and visible information in a single flight without changing cameras. What MSX allows you to do is to make more out of a single image. If you look at the image here of the vending machine, on the left you'll see just a thermal image without MSX, and on the right the thermal image with MSX. Not only does the MSX improve the clarity and the identification properties of the target that you're looking at, but it also allows the viewer to attain information that doesn't necessarily generate distinct thermal properties, such as the placards that you're looking at, the buttons, what's going on inside the glass. This also allows you to see things like placards, or in public safety to look at license plate numbers, addresses, patterns on clothing, street and traffic signs, and other valuable information that you might need that the thermal image alone would not capture. Next, we're going to look at some color palettes. So thermal imaging cameras take energy that radiates from every physical object in the world and translates it into either an estimated temperature value viewed as data or a visible image. Now, the visible image depicts a range of temperatures within the scene and casts them in different shades and colors depending on the palette that's being used. So FLIR thermal imaging cameras offer a range of these palettes to make your job easier, but some of the missions can be made more difficult with using the wrong palettes. So understanding the justification behind using a certain palette or selecting a palette is important for any user of thermal imagery. So white hot and black hot would be the two most basic palettes. As indicated by the name, what they show is the hottest thing in the scene in either white or black, and then everything cooler than that is scaled down to its opposite. However, these palettes are not merely negatives of one another. For instance, if you have a highly emissive scene that's exposed to solar energy from the sun all day, the white hot imagery may look entirely washed out because everything is hot and of the same temperature, where if you switch over to black hot, things will become a little bit easier to make out more details. White hot and black hot are also the best color palettes when identifying faint heat differences. So if you're looking for a person, for instance, search and rescue missions have been using white hot and black hot for decades. The more colorful palettes that you may have seen are more effective in what are called thermographic missions, such as utility inspection or infrastructure inspection. However, if you're trying to find a person with these palettes, it could be extremely difficult unless there's a difference between the temperature of the person that you're trying to locate and the surrounding area of more than 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So isotherms are a way to set a temperature parameter within the camera, and it basically highlights those things that fall within that range. To some, this is considered a game changer when it comes to public safety applications, and this feature is available currently in this Msx that FLIR produces with DJI, and will soon be made available with the FLIR Duo Pro R. Now, to achieve reliability in using isotherms, it's important to understand and address the variables that affect thermal imaging and radiometry. The misuse of isotherms could increase the danger of providing false negatives, which means that you assume that the target isn't there, but in fact, you just miss them. Accuracy in isothermic images, when you're looking for a person, can vary based off of the surrounding temperature, the time of day, skin temperature, body fat, type of clothing that they're wearing, and the material of the clothing. So a suggestion would be to not rely on isotherms entirely when you're doing these missions, but use them alongside with black hot and white hot. According to my good friend Garrett Brill, he's flown hundreds of missions in public safety. He's given some parameters of a guideline of what you should set your parameters when using isotherms. So for firefighting, he suggests that you set the high at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, the mid at 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and the low at 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and use the palette white hot ISO. Generally, you would want to extinguish anything that is near the fuel source at around 150 degrees or above that will show up, and areas over 300 degrees will pop out as red. But if you see anything pink, that could indicate that there's potentially hazardous material that's fueling the fire, and so you know you have a hazmat situation on your hands. For locating missing persons, the guideline would be setting the high at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the mid at 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and then setting the low temperature as low as the ambient temperature will allow without muddling the image. And this would usually fall between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Anything above 85 degrees Fahrenheit using isotherms is unlikely to be useful, and the suggested color palette would be mid-range white hot ISO color palette that would be available, like I said, in the Msx T. Setting the low temperature below 80 degrees will generally pick up clothing as well, so you might want to do some experimentation when using isotherm to see what works best in your area with the humidity and temperature that you're dealing with and the given time of year. All right, so let's talk about radiometry. Radiometry is the process of converting radiated energy into temperature, and advanced radiometric cameras that FLIR puts out will allow you to gather the temperature data from every pixel within the scene, and you could use this for post-flight analysis using software like FLIR tools, for instance. This capability is generally used in inspections, like you can see here, where the actual temperature is necessary versus the relative temperature that you're generally seeing. So basically, these components that you're looking at may have a range of normal operating temperature, and using a radiometric camera, you can determine the current operating temperature and see if it falls outside of that range, and if it does, it's a problem that you might want to address. However, radiometry does not have a clear use case in public safety missions. Because you might see these cameras available on the market, you might see, a Duo Pro R or the Duo R or the View Pro R or the Msx T R. The radiometric version is not necessary in public safety from everything that I've gathered, and I wanted to take the time to point this out. However, the practice in understanding the inputs that make a better thermographic reading will undoubtedly give you better imagery and a greater understanding in how to use this technology. So you can see here, this white hot image does not have this range on the right-hand side that shows the temperature scale. It's just whether something is present is all that you're really looking for in public safety missions. So if you've worked with aerial thermal imaging platforms before, you know that lens size, field of view is a common topic. Each resolution and lens combination, they put out a different field of view to capturing this imagery. And the basic concept here is that the wider field of view that you have, the more you'll see at a specific given time, but you'll also get less detail of the subject that you're looking for within the image. This can make locating a person quicker, but also the possibility of missing them greater. And the inverse is true with narrow field of view, which it gives you more specificity, more detail, but it can present a challenge in locating and staying locked on your target because it's like looking through a soda straw. In the past, I've tried several different ways to explain the pros and cons of using different field of views. So I'm going to try that one more time in the next few slides to give some different context behind this. When assessing the use of a thermal imaging camera for nearly any application, it's important to consider basically four things: the resolution of the camera, the lens size and field of view, the size of your target that you're trying to identify, and the distance between the camera and the target. So this green box here represents a 640 by 512 image. That means there's 640 pixels horizontally, and there's 512 pixels vertically, giving you roughly 327,000 pixels within a single image. Now let's imagine that you have two objects within the image. One object is 2 by 2 feet and that 2 by 2 foot object takes up around 5 by 5 pixels within the image at around, let's say, 100 feet. The other is 6 by 6 feet, and obviously it's larger in the image at the same altitude. Now, the 5 by 5 pixels that the first object takes up is the minimum necessary that you can expect to see your subject show up in a thermal image. Ideally, it would cover more than that 5 by 5 pixels. Now, if you were to bring the drone lower, obviously the objects within the image become bigger because it takes up more pixels within the image. But if you fly up higher, let's say up to 200 feet, the objects become smaller, and now that 2 by 2 foot object here would no longer meet the 5 by 5 pixels requirement for detection, and maybe even this 6 by 6 foot object also falls outside of the 5 by 5 pixel. So this was for a 640 by 512 camera. When you're looking at a 336 by 256 camera, the image itself does not shrink, right? So what it does is that the pixel size becomes larger. So here you can see it's basically the same image, 336 by 256, and it takes up more space within the image, but still this is only a 5 by 5 pixel image. So when you reduce the number of pixels, again, the pixels become larger, and then because you have fewer pixels, you must fly closer to the subject to get it to cover the same or the required number of pixels within the image for it. So here's that concept side by side. On the left, you have a 336 by 256 camera that has a maximum detection of around 125 feet for this 2 by 2 foot subject. To get 5 by 5 pixels of a 2 by 2 foot object, let's say that it's going to be, you have to fly at 125 feet. Or on the right hand side, you have a 640 by 512 camera. You could fly at 200 feet and detect the same subject, and you would also see more of the surrounding area. Now, we also have a variety of lenses available for each resolution, and as the size of the lens increases, then the subject will become more clear, and it'll take up more of the available pixels. However, you're losing the amount of space that you're seeing at any given time. All right, so one more attempt at this. This is one more way to look at it. Here we have a representation of each a 640 and a 336 resolution camera. If you notice that the pixel size on the image on the right is much larger in the 336 image. These both represent cameras with 9mm lenses, and you can notice that the field of view is vastly different. On the left-hand side, we have a horizontal field of view of 69 degrees and the vertical field of view of 56 degrees. At 100 feet elevation above ground level, you would see this as 121 feet from the left side of the image to the right, and 97 feet from the top of the image to the bottom. At the same altitude, you're seeing nearly half that amount of space at any given time, where you would see at 100 feet, 336 resolution camera, you'd see 63 feet from the left side to the right side of the image, and 48 feet from the top to the bottom, again at 100 feet. So what happens when the lenses get larger? As the focal length increases, the field of view becomes more narrow, and therefore at the same altitude, you're seeing less at a given time. So you can see that a 9mm lens on a 336 camera covers roughly the same amount as a 19mm lens on a 640 camera, with significantly greater detection ability on the 640 camera and image clarity. More pixels in the same field of view is key when looking through gaps in trees or just to detect a person in general. So you're able to search double the area in the same amount of time with a 640 resolution camera versus a 336. This is why resolution is so important, and focal length will allow you to fly higher altitudes in areas where that is necessary. So now I want to share some best practices that I've gathered. A few weeks ago, I sent out a survey to my contacts within public safety around the world that are either using or exploring using drones. And part of the survey asked them to share some of their stories and best practices in establishing their drone programs and using this technology in public safety. And here are a few things that I boiled down as takeaways from that survey. So the first is that it starts with the chief. And what I mean here is that it's important that the chief understands the value of drones. And when the chief understands their value, the department is significantly more likely to employ this technology. When the chief is not a believer, these programs struggle to get off the ground. This may be obvious to some, but getting the chief's blessing is necessary in establishing a drone program, and that was clear across the board. The second thing is practice makes perfect. This suggests that one should not rely on a single interaction with drones to serve you in a real-life scenario. Spending the time to fly regularly and experimenting in different ways will increase the value of the drones when you're off on a crucial mission, that you have the muscle memory when flying, that you know what you're looking for. And so this should be something that's iterated on a regular basis to do your own internal training. The next thing is that it was clear that establishing policies and procedures around the use of drones was vitally important. This would determine what cases drones could be used, who is able to fly, the pre-flight and safety checks that are necessary, standard maintenance, operating procedures. This will ensure that there's the proper use and longevity of the drone program within the public safety entity. Because public safety is held to a higher standard than most industries, there should also be proper training, and public safety operators should attain required licenses and permissions to make sure that they stay in the clear on those things. So this is probably the most important to me. The departments say that you should get rid of the drone as a toy mentality as quickly as you can. This technology is new and exciting, but it should not be misused, abused, or treated ambivalently. This technology requires investment of funds, times, and you also need to have conviction of not only the department, but the city and the public. So maintaining a consistent message to government officials and the public that the use of drones is controlled and you're using them responsibly will be the best chance for it to grow and last into the future. Another component is being transparent of how the drones are being used and keeping record of each time that they're deployed. This will keep from any error and accusations, and it's just a good practice in general. Also, any videos or photos that are acquired in each flight should be labeled and archived just in case there's any reason to go back to them. Also, understanding the equipment is extremely important. It's important to keep the units updated regularly so that you don't show up on site and have, there's a firmware upgrade that you missed and now you're not able to fly. Also, holding spare parts like batteries, propellers, and SD cards is also a very important thing to make sure that you're always able to deploy when necessary. And then knowing the capabilities and limitations of the drone will ensure proper use, knowing how long you can fly on a battery, when to bring it home, things like that. And the last thing, a little bit cliche, but safety first, conducting your pre-flight safety checks. And this includes anything from ensuring that the home point is set to making sure that the home point or the return to home point is free of obstacles so that, if it does need to come back autonomously, that it lands in a safe place to make sure that you have longevity within your drone program. Alongside of those questions in this survey, there were two other things that I thought were interesting to share. I provided a list of capabilities and payloads that are used in drones and asked these public safety respondents to rank them 1 to 5 stars in importance. You can see that thermal imaging cameras were considered the most important thing for public safety applications, with a weighted average of 4.54 out of 5. And this came ahead of visible cameras, the ability to transmit video on large displays, being able to transmit the video wirelessly over the internet, autonomous mission flying and mission planning, object avoidance sensors, and the ability to drop different payloads. Another question that I asked them to respond to is, what reason has a drone department not expanded? What is the reason that you're using drones less than you could be otherwise? And 70% of the respondents said cost. And I'm sure that if you're a public service provider, if you're a law enforcement agent or a firefighter, that you feel this all the time. And it's our responsibility as manufacturers to try to drive those costs down. But I think that as this technology becomes more prevalent, that's just what happens with economies of scale. So this is something that can be addressed to drive costs down. The next thing was regulations. Also, I think that as public acceptance of drones and how government understanding of drones becomes increased, and the more that public safety is using these and saving lives and doing really great things with the technology, the regulations could become eased. So this is something that also could be overcome. 22% responded that access to budget is part of the problem. And I guess that also could be addressed as there's more understanding of what this technology can do. 17% said that the technology just lacks the capabilities that they need. Also, just as technology grows and as more minds are wrapped around this, the technology should be able to reach those requirements. 17% said available personnel to operate the drones is the problem, and some are using civilian pilots to do it so that they'll call them in so that the public safety agencies can do their thing and not worry about doing the drone while someone from the outside that is not necessarily going to be running into a fire or something like that is the one that's operating. And then 9% relayed that public opinion is what weighs down their ability. And I think that transparency with the public of how these are being used, when they're being deployed, and that there is responsibility taken in every step will inevitably bring that down to a lower percentage. So the uses of drones in public safety are constantly expanding, and as this technology improves, we're certain that drones will be cemented as a regular thing within public safety. So I'm going to show a few detailed uses of where drones are being used in finding people, firefighting, and also anti-poaching efforts. But drones are also being used for accident reconstruction, being used for anti-trafficking of drugs and people, damage assessment and disaster recovery, SWAT and high-risk missions, and also for hazmat support. These are just some of the ways that drones are being used in public safety. So we've discussed that finding people is probably the most important use for drones in public safety, and that thermal imaging enhances the drone's capability drastically. Most missions for public safety occur in remote areas where the terrain can be difficult to navigate and in some cases inaccessible. So the drone allows you to fly high above the trees, see through gaps of foliage, and locate your target even in the darkness of night. So a few tips in the most successful searches are, first, you should encourage your target to get bigger. This means that if you could use lights or sound that comes from the drone, it can encourage the missing person to kind of stand up, to move around, and increases your chance of successful detection. Also, you should keep in mind that false positives, meaning thinking that you've spotted something but truly there was nothing there, is much better than false negatives, which are flying over your subject and missing it. And then isotherms may help with this, making sure that you can detect your person that you're looking for, but also should be used only when you have confidence in your abilities to set the parameters correctly. In the image in the middle, this shows that this is flying quite high over some trees in a sloped environment. You can see a first responder right here, around in the middle, right below the crosshairs, and to the left, it was this dog. And when they're moving, it's much easier to see. This was used to locate a teenage hiker that was lost in the woods successfully. So that is the image on the left-hand side when they found the teenager lying on the ground with this mountain rescue person and their canine unit. And on the right-hand side, you can see a toddler that was missing from a campsite, and they had just started walking down this hiking path, and using aerial thermal imaging, they were able to locate the missing child. For firefighting, there's 1.3 million fires in the United States each year, and these result in $14.3 billion in property loss. Deploying drone technology can improve firefighting operations. This could result in millions of property saved, result in memories preserved, less lives lost, etc. And in firefighting operations, the aerial perspective provides an opportunity to bring in outside expertise, where you're sending this video over the web, for instance, so that they can weigh in on the best method to fight the fire. It also captures invaluable video assets for the purpose of training without putting anyone at risk. And thermal imaging cameras are also able to identify hotspots so that you can point out, areas of fighting this fire that could be hazardous or presenting the most danger to the fire growing. So here's a video about anti-poaching.
I love flying drones, I really do. As a kid, I've always wanted to fly, and drones let you do just that. They let you look at the world from a different view, a view most people don't get to see every day. Drones take photography and videography to like a new level, a level that was unattainable until recent years. Here on Milagro 3, drones have proven to be one of the most valuable assets we have battling poaching in the Gulf of California. It all starts when the officer on watch suspects a fishing boat may be fishing illegally. The officer then takes the radar and studies the movement of the boat in question. If the boat is fishing within the restricted refuge, they become a target. After a quick setup, the drone is launched and heading towards its new target. We are able to fly high above, documenting the fishing boat's illegal activity without them even knowing we are watching. All necessary footage is gathered from the drone, and the nets our crew physically pull up are then used as evidence and given to the necessary authorities. Thanks to accessible technology, both the Farley Mowat and the Sam Simon are equipped with stealth night vision drones, ensuring that poachers are no longer safe under the sun nor the darkness of night. Whether they are pulling out an illegal gill net or pulling in an endangered totoaba fish, we are there, and even if they don't know it, we are watching.
So the last thing I'd like to leave you with is that the technical nature of thermal imaging should not frighten you, but if you're using this technology, training will help to attain better image quality and make the most of your investment. FLIR owns the Infrared Training Center, or ITC, which has classes that certify level 1 thermographers, and they have classes specifically on small UAS. We have some classes that are upcoming, and they come up around the United States mostly now, but this should be a worldwide effort. So if you want more information on this technology or more information about these classes, you can email them at info@infraredtraining.com. These classes touch on inspections and other uses, but again, understanding the variables that are involved in how to get the best output of imagery is going to be to your benefit, even in public safety. So again, if you have any questions at all about the information presented here or any inquiries about aerial thermal imaging applications in general, don't hesitate to email me. I appreciate you taking the time to know more about this technology and what we're doing at FLIR, and I really look forward to hearing from you soon.